Hello, and welcome to today's video. Kind of in preparations for the Season 12 announcement, I wanted to make a small series of videos covering what I think would be good directions or ideas that I had that could be changes or patches, things you can do with the game. Um, I want to make like a disclaimer here, and I'll make it before the start of every one of those videos. This is not a demand list. This is not make this or game bad kind of series. I think the game is in a very good state, generally speaking. Like I think PD2 is in a very good state. I like where the game is, and if the devs decided to just pull the reset lever and just give us a new season with no changes, I would still be happy with the game. But I still find it'd be interesting to just think about things we would like changed about the game, things that we think could benefit some classes or some situations. And the way I'm going to approach it is I'm going to talk about just general skills, items, and things of that nature. And then I'll address bossing and I'll address mapping separately for some builds. Because some builds feel good for mapping and feel bad for bossing, and some the opposite. Some classes feel like they excel at one thing and they really struggle at another. And even though I think that's okay, I don't think all classes should be the same in all, in all avenues. I think that's fine to have that diversity. For some classes, I feel like there could be made some changes that would still maintain their identity and still give that like difficulty difference between characters, but still would make like the experience a little bit more enjoyable for that class. So with that said, I'm gonna start with the Druid. I just decided to start from right to left, so nothing crazy there. Start with Druid and I'll go left every time on the character select screen or class select screen. So Druid is the first class, and for Druid, a class that I play non-stop. We have the three trees: elemental, shapeshifting, and summoning. And I'll start with summoning because that's a tree that was heavily changed or heavily nerfed, I should say, for the most part in season 11. And a lot of people were upset. I think a lot of people thought this skill tree became very weak. While I don't think that's the case at all, you still have two major mapping builds with Poison Creeper and Summoning, and Summoning has its own like variants, whether you go wolves, bears, or just like full summon everything kind of approach. I think this tree is very strong. If it's one of the stronger trees in the game even, I would say, because it can do everything: bossing, leveling, mapping, early mapping, budget, whatever you want. Something that I still feel like is kind of lacking in this skill tree, there's like basically 2 points. One of them is Spur of the Barbs. I feel like forever this is like it feels like the most useless skill that you just kind of have to put a point to get into Oak at this point. Um, and damage return in general as a mechanic, I feel like always been this kind of like thorn in the game where it's hard to make that mechanic seem fun. But I feel like the PD2 team managed to make a lot of things that I didn't think would ever be interesting or viable. Interesting, and I do think this is a skill that definitely needs looking into, because right now it's just like it just sits there. So I don't know if raising the amount of damage that it does, I don't know if that's like interesting at all. But I do think giving it some form of damage reduction, making it kind of like a defensive approach kind of spirit. So we have like more life, we have more attack, then we can have like also more it says return, but maybe if I had like some flat damage reduction or something of that nature, with like the synergies also making it better at giving you damage reduction. So I thought that could be a direction for Spur of the Barbs. If people really hate this, then I guess we can completely delete my comments. But of course, remember, these are just my opinions. I want to see the Spirit ever used. I think this is kind of like a form of buff or debuff that wouldn't be out of the out of the park for Druid, since you do have like forms of damage reduction on the Werewolf. So I think that could be interesting. I'm not saying give it PDR percent, but some flat magic damage reduction and flat damage reduction, or just one of them, I think could be a good place to start. You could give it a little bit of absorb as well, you know, flat absorb, things like that. I thought would be a nice direction for Spirit of Bobs, just to test it out, see if people start picking it up, instead of necessarily always going with more HP or more damage and attack rating. So that's one point in the summoning skill tree that I kind of wanted to address. The other one is the wolves. I feel like there was an attempt at making a wolf summoner with the Fenrir, New Helm Fenrir, that lets you summon more wolves, but you can't summon bears. There was kind of an attempt to use it and make it kind of like its own like summoner type. What ended up being with Fenrir is that people just used it for shapeshifters. So like both werewolf and the werebear really liked it for damage just because it came with physical damage reduction. And I had the idea last season, and I still stick by it, that you could, generally speaking, make a summoning wolf type, but the way that it would work is that it would have synergies with werewolf. And my idea was that you have this kind of pack leader type of build that will synergize between werewolf, specifically, not necessarily feral, rage, or fury, just like the normal attacks of werewolf that would be buffed by your summoned wolves, whether it's just by dire wolves or spirit wolves as well. I thought that would be kind of like an interesting thing where you kind of cosplay as like the wolf pack leader. So I thought that could be something interesting that you could do with it. Again, this is like a direction that requires a lot of thought of how you implement it. Since wolves are not really relevant for bossing, it would be more of a mapping build, and it would maybe finally make like mapping with shapeshifters a little bit more interesting. So that is kind of the direction that I'm pulling for the wolves. I don't feel like they would ever be much better than relying on grizzlies and ravens for your main damage as summoner, or alternatively the poison setup. And other than that, I think the skill tree is pretty good. It's pretty well done. The skills are used in many, in many builds, and they seem to work very fine there. And for the record, I don't think ravens and bears were nerfed too hard. I think they're still very good, and they're still like the prime choice for leveling, early farming, and they can even be used for bossing still and for mapping. So overall, great tree. Let's move to the next one. In the shapeshifting tree, I'll go over the ones I think are fine first. We have Rabies and Fireclaw, two builds that are really, really nice and fun. Both for mapping and for bossing, both of them work and both of them are good. And then we have the two physical builds, ignoring Shockwave for a moment. The two physical builds, Werebear, the Slap Bear, and the Fury Werewolf. And these two builds, well, I mean, they're two bossing builds. They seem to always have been at kind of like the top of bossing and kind of like in the mid-level of mapping because they can kill stuff but kind of struggle with movement. While I think their mapping form is fine, I think that maybe due to the changes to crafting in Season 11, where it's easier to create insane weapons, the damage has been kind of going out of control for these two builds, and I think if you don't want to revert the change to crafting, which I'm okay with crafting being very, very strong, I think maybe it's time to give the damage nerf to Maul and Fury, somebody who plays both of these builds a lot and really loves these builds. I think it's okay, it's time. We're speedrunning the bosses maybe a little too fast, and it became a little bit too ridiculous in my opinion. I don't think that the tankiest build in the game should also be the highest damage build in the game, while also having, a lot of other benefits. So yeah, generally speaking, I think a damage nerf is in order for Maul and for Fury, not just for Maul. I think for both of them, Maul should be stronger than Fury. So if you only nerf Maul, then they're pretty much the same, but Fury is better in every other way. So a damage nerf to both of them is what I think is the appropriate measure. For the record, a lot of people are saying you should nerf Lycanthropy instead, but that would also hurt Rabies, and it would also hurt people who like farming in Shapeshift, but also as summoners, which is definitely a thing. So I don't see a reason to hurt these two other, builds when you can clearly just nerf the damage, which is the main offender in my opinion. This build should be tanky. That's kind of like the thing with the shapeshifters. So I don't see a reason to nerf Lycanthropy. I think nerfing the damage is much more correct. Other than that, Feral Rage, Fury, I feel like they work fine. Maul, I do feel like Hunger is a bit of an afterthought kind of skill. You just dump points into it, or just put 1 point into it to have access to it. Having it interact in a little bit more meaningful way, maybe have like some sort of extra synergies with bleed on your gear, maybe encouraging you to do kind of more of a bleed type build with Hunger might be interesting, or alternatively having it give you more utility instead of like the small amount of lifesteal that it gives could be also an interesting thought. It's just right now it feels like an afterthought, and it plays like an afterthought, so I don't really know what else we could do with it. But yeah, that's about it for Hunger. Shockwave, I feel like is a skill that has its place in group play, especially in dungeons. It is not really meant as a solo build, in my opinion. It can be used for early farming, but it's not as effective as Summoner, I think, will ever be. So, again, I think the skill is fine for what it is. It's kind of like, uses for group play and especially in dungeons for the stun. And I think that's fine if you have skills that just have that kind of niche use case, and some people enjoy mapping with them. So that's it for the Shapeshifting tree. Let's move to the Elemental tree. And over here, I feel like for the most part, we have a pretty good balance with two amazing builds, being Arctic Blast and the Armageddon Volcano Fire Druid. Personally, I don't think this build should be nerfed. I know that it's a very strong build, and it's probably gonna get nerfed eventually. I think the build generally is fine. It's fairly fragile, and you can reduce the damage by becoming a little bit more tanky, which I think is fine. The build is fun to build. It requires a lot of resources, and I think that's a fair point for what it does. Arctic Blast, very similarly, a little bit cheaper and almost as effective. Again, for people who don't mind the channel-in animation, is a very nice build. And third, you have the Twister build. And for the Twister build, I think the one thing that I would like to see is for the Twister items to maybe have higher proc chances. So you can enable a little bit more of the proc Twister builds, whether it's the rings, I forget the names of the rings, the ones that give move speed. I wonder if I have them over here. Carrion Vine, that's their name. Yeah, I don't have them here. But I have them somewhere, not on this character. So Carrion Vines, that's the name of the rings. You have Windhammer, and you have, which kind of fell from grace after it was nerfed, and I think I'm forgetting one item maybe that is used in proc builds. But again, maybe raising their proc chance or making their procs a little bit stronger, a higher level. Something that would make like this build a little bit more competitive with the other builds in the skill tree. I personally like the Wind Druid. I don't think it's weak, but it definitely feels a lot worse to use. It feels a lot less smooth compared to other builds. So either buffing the proc version or giving it extra, like an extra projectile at higher skill point levels. So it feels a little bit more smooth to clear maps with it. I think all that would be fine for a Twister. Other than that, I heard Senpai say that he wants to fix Fissure in terms of its AoE. It does feel a little bit clunky to me to use. I never really liked Fissure that much. I always preferred the Molten Boulders, Volcanoes, Armageddon. And I think like a little buff to AoE on Fissure would make it feel a little bit more consistent, and maybe people would use it again a little bit more. But yeah, overall, like this skill tree is very nice. I think the Druid is overall in a pretty good state. Okay, after all that, like there's only one thing left to talk about, which is kind of like the Druid set. I do not have the Aldur set on me. I never really keep that set, right? I don't think I have anything of the set here. But the Aldur set is like always had like a problem where the weapon is kind of like a useless weapon, and nobody likes it. So I think it's time to either change that weapon. I know that Senpai doesn't even like sets, so I don't know if this will ever get touched, or maybe it will only get removed if it ever gets changed. I think that something that can be done with it is making it either a caster weapon, to just keep in line with the theme of the Aldur set, which is more fitting for summoners. Or alternatively, You can give it like some elemental skills and make it kind of more in that direction. This weapon will never be used for a shapeshifter. The Aldur set is not really fitting for a shapeshifter anyway. So I think taking it either in the caster direction or taking it in the summoner direction is kind of like the best thing you can do with it, just in terms of like, you know, text changes, just to make it usable for people who do want to use the Aldur set when they're just getting started. So that's kind of like what I would do with it personally. But you know, that's just my opinion. If you guys have ideas as to how to change Druid and what to do with Druid that you think you want to share, make sure to drop them in the comments, just so we can learn about the things that Druid is missing or things that should be changed about him. I really like the direction with all the helms, all the things that were done with Druid in terms of like the new helmets that try to give builds different identities or different directions in what they can do. I think that's very cool personally, and Druid as a mapper and as kind of like as a bosser is a very capable class. Now I will say that I think in terms of bossing he is a little bit stronger than what I want him to be, as somebody who bossed with Druid maybe the most in recent memory. So I think he's a little bit too strong in terms of Maul and Fury. I think the two builds are incredibly powerful, and I'd like to see them brought down the same way that Summoner was brought down, where it wasn't killed, it's still viable in tier 2s, but it feels like a lot more challenging now. It feels like it requires more out of the player to make like the kill happen. Same with Rabies, same with same with all the other builds for Druid. I think if Maul and Fury will have a slight damage nerf, it will basically make him a very healthy bosser character, and it wouldn't really hurt his mapping, since damage isn't really the thing that's slowing him down in mapping, it's just like his movement. With that said, like he can right now, like at the moment of making this video, like you have like Volcano being able to take down tier 2s, you have the Summoner being able to take down tier 2s, Maul, Fury, Rabies, and Fireclaw. So many builds that can boss at tier 2 for the Druid, and in tier 0 even more options. So I really think he's a strong bosser character, and the slight damage nerf on Maul and Fury wouldn't kill him at all. And the same is true for mapping. He has a lot of top tier mappers between Fire Druid, Summoners, and Arctic Blast. So very strong class overall. If only one thing I could choose from all the changes that I suggested, probably the damage nerf to Maul and Fury. Just because I really do think that we went a little bit too much of the damage last season. So that's my opinions and thoughts about Druid. Things that I think that could be changed or should be changed. If you have other thoughts or you disagree with me or whatever, it's just my opinion. And I mean, you can write about it or something if you want to, but it's really not that deep. So I'm excited to see what we're gonna get for season 12, and I guess tomorrow we can talk about another class and see what's up with them. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next stream or in the next video. Until the next time, have a good whatever you're having, and bye.